If you've been crushing eggshells into your tomato bed to stop blossom end rot, I've got some bad news. And then some good news. Here's the bad news. When researchers actually tested it, they found those shells can sit in your soil for over a year before they release any calcium at all. Over a year. That's a long time to wait for a fix that's supposed to save this summer's tomatoes. Now the good news. There's a fix that costs almost nothing, and the science says it actually works. We'll get to that. So today we're putting 3 old kitchen remedies to the science test. Eggshells, baking soda, and Epsom salt. 3 things sitting in your cupboard right now that folks swear by every single year. 2 of them don't do what you've been told. And number 3, it might be making your tomatoes worse, not better. Stick with me, because that one surprises almost everybody. Here's the thing. None of this comes from my opinion. Every claim today is checked against university extension research. Real soil scientists, real trials, not garden forum folklore. So let's separate the wisdom from the wishful thinking. Let's start with the big one. Eggshells. You know the advice. Save your shells, crush them up, dig them in around your tomatoes, and you'll never see blossom end rot again. A lot of us learned that from our grandparents. And it sounds perfect, doesn't it? Free calcium from something you'd throw away anyway. So here's why people believe it. And it's not crazy. An eggshell really is about 95% calcium carbonate. The calcium is genuinely in there. That part is true. But here's the catch nobody mentions. That calcium is locked up tight. Calcium carbonate doesn't dissolve in water. And if your plant can't dissolve it, your plant can't drink it. It just sits there like a can of soup with no can opener. How long does it sit? Extension trials found that coarsely crushed shells take at least a full year to break down in the soil. Whole shells, the kind you just toss in halved, can take 2 years or more. 2 years! Your tomato plant lives for 1 season. The math just doesn't work. There was one way to make it work in testing. You had to grind the shells into a fine powder, almost like flour. Only then did the calcium compare to garden lime. And let's be honest, nobody's standing in the kitchen grinding eggshells into powder every night, you know. A handful of shells, a quick crush with your boot, and into the bed they go. That's how real people do it. And done that way, the shells are far too slow to help this season's plants. But here's the part that really changes everything. And this is the open loop I promised. Even if your eggshells did release calcium overnight, they still wouldn't stop blossom end rot. Because blossom end rot usually isn't a calcium shortage at all. Let me say that again, because it's the whole game. Blossom end rot is almost never caused by a lack of calcium in your soil. Most garden soil already has plenty. So what is it? Here's why this works the way it does. Think of calcium like a passenger that can only ride on water. It travels up through the plant in the water the roots pull in. No steady water, no ride. When your watering goes from bone dry to soaking wet and back again, that calcium delivery gets cut off right when the fruit needs it. And the bottom of the tomato turns black and sunken. So it's not a soil problem. It's a plumbing problem. You can dump all the eggshells, all the calcium in the world into that bed, and if the watering is uneven, you'll still get the rot. That's the part the old advice gets completely backwards. And don't toss your shells out either. In the compost, over the years, they break down just fine and feed your soil a little. They're just far too slow to fix anything this season. Don't panic about the rot, though. The fix is easier than crushing shells, and we'll cover it at the end. For now, just remember, eggshells, too slow and aimed at the wrong target. So hold that thought about steady watering, because myth number 3, the one most folks reach for, can actually make this exact rot worse. We'll get there. But first, let's open the cupboard again. Baking soda. Now, this one comes in 2 flavors, and I want to be fair to both, because one of them is pure myth, and the other is actually half true. This is where it gets interesting. First flavor. People say if you sprinkle baking soda around your tomato plants, the fruit comes out sweeter. The idea is that it cuts the acid and sweetens things up. Here's what the science says. There's no known mechanism for that. None. Researchers looked, and there's simply no way baking soda in the soil makes a tomato sweeter. What actually decides sweetness? 3 things. The variety you planted, the hours of sunshine it gets, and steady water and good nutrition. That's it. The sweetness was decided the day you picked your seeds, not by anything in the baking soda box. And there's a real cost to this one. Baking soda is loaded with sodium. Keep dumping it on year after year, and that sodium builds up in your soil. It can break down the soil structure and even burn your plant's leaves. So this trick isn't just useless. Done over and over, it can quietly do harm. I'd skip it entirely. I've seen gardeners online swear their tomatoes tasted better after they tried it. And I believe they tasted better. But here's the thing. It was almost surely a sweeter variety, or a sunnier summer doing the work. The baking soda just happened to be standing nearby, taking the credit. Now, the second flavor of the baking soda story. And here's the one time baking soda actually earns its spot in your garden shed, if you do it right. This is the half that's true, so stay with me. Some folks use baking soda spray to fight powdery mildew. That's the white, dusty fungus that shows up on leaves, like somebody dusted them with flour. And here, the research gives a more careful answer. Baking soda can help, but there's a big catch in how it helps. It's what scientists call fungistatic, not fungicidal. In plain English, it stops new fungus from getting started. It does not kill the fungus that's already there. So it's a shield, not a sword. You use it to protect clean leaves, not to rescue ones already covered. And it barely works on its own. The extension recipes always mix it with a light horticultural oil, because the oil is what makes it stick and do the real work. One common university recipe is 1.5 tablespoons of baking soda plus 3 tablespoons of light horticultural oil in 1 gallon of water sprayed every week or 2. But here's your non-negotiable. More is not better with this one. Too strong a mix can scorch the very leaves you're trying to save. So go light, follow the recipe, and test it on a few leaves first before you spray the whole plant. When in doubt, the simplest fix for mildew is free anyway. Give your plants room to breathe, water at the roots instead of the leaves, and let the sun and air do their job. So baking soda, sweeter tomatoes, that's a no. Mildew shield, a careful yes, with oil and a light hand. All right, 2 myths down, and now we come to number 3, the one most folks get exactly backwards. Epsom salt. This might be the most popular garden hack of them all. You've seen it, a spoonful of Epsom salt at the bottom of the planting hole for bigger, healthier, more productive tomatoes. Maybe your neighbor swears by it. Here's the first thing to know. Epsom salt is magnesium sulfate. Read that again. Magnesium. There is 0 calcium in it. So if you're using it hoping to stop blossom end rot, you're treating a calcium problem with something that has no calcium. It can't work for that. Ever. Now, does it help in any way? Only in one narrow case. Epsom salt gives plants magnesium, and magnesium only helps if your soil is actually short on it. And here's the thing. In most American garden soils, a real magnesium shortage is pretty rare. So for most of us, we're adding something the plant didn't need in the first place. But here's the part that turns this from useless into harmful. And this is why I said number 3 gets it backwards. Remember how calcium rides up the plant on water? Well, too much magnesium starts pushing and shoving at the root, elbowing the calcium out of line. So by piling on Epsom salt, you can actually make calcium uptake worse, which means you can make blossom end rot worse. The exact thing many people are trying to fix. 2 university extension services spelled this out plainly. Excess magnesium competes with calcium and can deepen the very problem. So the cupboard cure folks reach for most, for a lot of gardens, it's quietly working against them. Don't add magnesium unless a soil test says you're short. Plain and simple. So there's our scorecard. Eggshells, too slow and aimed wrong. Baking soda, no sweeter tomatoes, but an okay mildew shield with oil. Epsom salt, only for a real shortage, and it can backfire on your tomatoes. Now, I promised you a fix that costs almost nothing and actually works. Here it is. And after all those no's, you're going to like how simple this is. For healthy tomatoes and a real defense against blossom end rot, the single most powerful thing you can do is water steadily. Not a flood one day and a drought the next, steady. Aim for about 1 to 2 inches of water a week, counting the rain, and try to keep it even. Then lock that moisture in with mulch. A few inches of straw or wood chips over the soil acts like a blanket. It keeps the ground from drying out fast in the heat and swinging back and forth. Even moisture means calcium gets its steady ride up to the fruit exactly when the fruit needs it. That's the whole secret. No grinding, no special box from the store. And here's the beauty of it. This works no matter where you garden. Whether you're up north in a cold zone 4 or way down south in a warm zone 9, even water and a blanket of mulch do the same job. The plant doesn't care about your zip code. It cares about a steady drink. Takes 10 minutes to lay the mulch down, and your soil holds that moisture for days. And if you've already got rot on the fruit and want a real rescue, there's one science-backed spray. A calcium spray made for plants. About 4 tablespoons of calcium nitrate in a gallon of water. Misted onto the small, dime-sized young fruit 2 or 3 times a week. That gets calcium straight where the plumbing wasn't delivering it. Here's a bonus you'll appreciate. Plain water and a layer of straw are completely safe around your grandkids and your pets. No harsh powders, no salty buildup. Nothing you have to worry about when the little ones are out helping you in the garden. So before you bury one more eggshell, do this instead. Spend about $15 on a simple soil test. It's the one thing that actually tells you what your garden needs, instead of guessing with whatever's in the cupboard. Most of the time, you'll find your soil already has the calcium. What it needed all along was a steady drink of water. Let's bring it home. Our grandparents got a lot right, and gardening is supposed to be passed down like that. But the kitchen cure shortcuts? The eggshells, the baking soda for sweetness, the Epsom salt? The science just doesn't back them up. The real magic was never in the cupboard. It was in showing up, watering steady, and keeping it simple. So keep it easy. Trust the steady water over the magic powder, and have a little fun out there. If this cleared a few things up, stick around. We test one more garden myth against the science every week, so you can stop wasting effort and start growing more. Happy gardening!